Welcome to Let's Play Rule the Waves 2 as France, starting in 1920. This is episode 7, and after a short successful war against Italy, we're going back on track to reform and rebuild our hodgepodge of a 1920s fleet. But before we do that, I just wanted to take a moment to reflect on the battle that I fought in the previous episode. Having a think about it, my attitude at the time was it was a marginal Italian victory or a marginal defeat for me. And it was like, well, that's not my fault. The supporting forces went off and did their own thing. You can't blame me for that. Well, I guess the learning is when there are supporting forces, and the supporting forces were actually bigger than my force, 3 CLs against 2 that I had under my control. Yes, they can help you, and that's lovely, but they equally might need help, and saying it's not my fault isn't going to make any difference to the losses and to the victory conditions. So don't think of them the same as, say, allies, where they are completely expendable. Go and help them, or allow yourself to be helped as the tactical situation requires. Secondly, as a convoy battle, and I was a bit tired that day, but I should have remembered that really you can't just barrel in and start a giant melee that just gets super confusing, because that's really just going to invite short ranges, torpedoes, losses. Separate the convoy covering force from the convoy and be reasonably sure that that's occupied and not going to disturb you before you barrel into the convoy and destroy them all. So that was just a couple of things that I realized after the fact. Let's now go back and have a look at how well we're doing with the original plan that we started in 1920 in episodes 1 and 2. So good news, we've scrapped all the unupgradable battleships and some of the light cruisers, more to do there, but currently they're off mainly in the colonial empire fulfilling that requirement. Refits the 12-inch battleships gradually. This is a minimal refit just to keep them viable and not cost too much, because when they're obsolescent they cost extra maintenance. Refit the Shanxi as a pocket battleship. That's been done. We'll just brush under the carpet the whole refitting of the Shanxi as a light cruiser that I had to scrap. Rebuild the Dessay battle cruisers into our first generation carrier escort force at 28 knots. So 1 more to do, 3 in rebuild right now. Refit the Brix heavy cruisers and the Quit Laurent light cruisers for some colonial service, so that we can really begin to bring down the cost of the colonial service at the moment, because, you know, we're using battleships out there. Start to develop air power, yep, with the CVL conversions going and a new CVL about to start. We haven't really reviewed our cruisers and our destroyer escorts, our DDs. We haven't done much to strengthen coastal defences, and we certainly haven't really sorted out our colonial fleet, or indeed started to build a proper anti-submarine and minesweeping corvette force. But on the bright side, we've shown Italy a thing or two about respecting France. So let's have a little look at how we're doing with our cruisers. Now, as is typical with a legacy fleet, you get a huge number of different classes, which in itself makes it hard to manage. Now, I'm not going to go through this in detail. I've done an hour or something reviewing all of these. Suffice to say, the Montcalm is rebuildable, costs a fair chunk, 36,000, but a whole new CV costs 63. So that represents a reasonable bargain, getting a 10-inch gun, 5-inch belt, up to 28 knots, and serviceable for the carrier fleet to come. Yes, it would be nice if it was 30 knots, but it will do for now. The Bruix is already done. The Trond is not really worth upgrading, and its hull form can only go up to 26. The Forbin can't do anything. It's actually an illegal design. Its deck extender armor is more than its belt extender armor, which isn't allowed. Quid Laurent, I've already done. The Lavoisier, there's only one of them because one of them got lost. There's no reasonable, simple refit for it. I could spend 15,000 to take it up to 20 knots, but a whole new spanking one costs 27,000. So relatively expensive. The Jean Bart, there's 4 of them. They at 14,000 could be taken up to 28 knots. That seems reasonable. Sfax, they're modern, as are the sole remaining Pascal, so nothing to do there. Going back to the 1920 plan, but thinking, what do I want to prioritize here? Well, number one, keep the planes up to date. They're not a significant factor now because they're slowish and they only have a 100-mile range, but more and more that's going to be a really important factor. Finish rebuilding the Doucets, build the first of this new Dixmude class, refit my 12-inch battleships, but just as little as possible and just gradually. And I think most importantly, create a colonial corvette force. So I'm looking to build something like 20 of them. That would take account of the full colonial foreign station requirement. That would cost about 63,000, which, if you remember, is exactly the cost of a new armored cruiser. So one armored cruiser, I mean, it's a wonderful thing, 9-inch guns, 30 knots, beautiful, but only able to do so much, 15,000 tons worth of, or less, of foreign station requirement against nearly 40,000 tons of foreign station requirement fulfilled by this corvette force, plus, of course, 20 trade protection ships in wartime, plus, of course, just lowering the whole cost. You know, when you're using cruisers and battleships out in the colonies, it costs a lot. Refit the Jean Barts, rebuild the Montcalm, replace my 1904, 1905 light cruisers, and gradually refit the obsolescent destroyers with, starting with the most modern. So I've got like some 1912 ones that have just become obsolescent and they need sorting out. And then finally, just keep an eye on the submarines. It's not going to be a major part of what I'm going to do in the 1920s, but obviously if I decide to tackle Britain, then a big submarine force, or indeed America, is absolutely the thing to do. That's a whistle-stop view of what's in my head as to where to go next at the end of our war. Doing this at the end of the war, don't just start off month by month. I think it's a really good discipline. For now, let's have a look at what we've got going at the moment. So we're slightly under in our monthly balance. We've got 24,500 in the kitty. Under construction, we've got a design study for a corvette that I already started. The Dixmude is going to start building next month, and these 3 Doucets are going to be finished in a year. Over here, what reasonably are my priorities? So I'm looking at these battleships, not the Doucet, but the Richelieu and the Devastation. They need a minimal refit just to stop them costing so much. So I'll crack on with that and then work my way down. So here's the refit for the Richelieu class. Nothing devastating. I've increased the elevation, improved the fire control, improved the 5-inch guns to quality 1, given it a director, given them some 12-inch guns for dual purpose to give them a heavy anti-aircraft and a light anti-aircraft to stop it from just being a sitting duck. And that's really all I want to do with that. I'm going to click OK, and OK, and OK, and rebuild them both. Even though one of them actually was under repair, you can rebuild them. That's that. Let's have a look at the Devastation. Likewise here, Fire control, elevation, secondary arms. Now the secondary are only 3-inch guns, and they suffer a 20% rate of fire disadvantage because they're not casemated. If we had a proper secondary armament, then the fact that the 3-inch guns weren't casemated, given it director, given it dual purpose, fitted out some light anti-aircraft guns too. You'll notice the rounds at 80. You know, this is one of the reasons why these ships are not attractive to rebuild. But as a refit, that's fine. Let's okay that and that and that. That's taken our monthly balance to minus 3,500, which is enough to be getting on with. Press on into March. So we've got a new flying boat. Am I interested? Am I? It's faster. Consider me quite a bit faster. I mean, these are still slow speeds, but that certainly helps. Oh, look at the range. 195 against 102. Yes, I'm interested in that. So yes, undoubtedly do that. And I have my corvettes ready. I'm not going to build them now because we're maxed with rebuilding. Go to the build screen for the Dixmude. Yes. I'm going to build one. I know that's probably unwise. I mean, the good thing is these battleships only take 3 or 4 months to complete. So that should just about get us in by the skin of our teeth. Running out of money. However, that should be fine. And here come our ships. Finishing reconstruction. Wonderful. Scientists close to getting above water tubes on other ships, which is great. No. And July. There's our final ship. The old shooting competition. Well, why not? Lengthened torpedoes. That's very nice. Range up to nearly 5,000 and 10,000 at slower speed. Now, we were researching a new flying boat to replace the old one before industry popped up with their own, which is now under Dev 5, so is about to be completed. And looking at these, the middle one seems to be marginally better, but not so much better that I want to put the whole thing back by 5 months. I'm going to cancel that and carry on with the one that we're building now. Into August, the old setback. Catapults. Now, that's the thing. I would love to have had catapults on my new CVL, so that's going to be definitely a quick refit for them. Also for my existing CVL, my modernized battleship. And when I come to refit ships or design new ships, particularly cruisers, obviously, thinking about catapults, or indeed even an AV, is definitely going to be a thing. So pleased to see catapults. Looks like we're going to run out of money before the first of the Doucets is in. So we're just going to hold back one of these just for a couple of months, just to squeeze that through. September. Thank you very much. Private shipbuilding. I haven't been paying attention to dock size, I have to admit. So we can do 36. Let's pop to the almanac and have a look at Germany, 41, Russia, 38, Britain, 46, Italy, 41, Japan, 46, America, 46. So we are 10,000 tons behind. So there's 2 things you can do here. One, get a move on and start investing in our dock size. Or 2, just let it go and decide to build your ships in other shipyards. I could build in Britain, although tensions are slightly raised, in Japan or America, and that would be fine. Obviously, long term, it's probably better to build up the docks, but temporarily I'm going to be okay with that, particularly in the knowledge that the private sector will help a little bit in this regard. And I was just going to say October, but we have a major upheaval in Albania. Do we want to send the Italians an ultimatum? Well, they should have known. They should have known. So, hell yes. We're going to see if we can make them back down. And they back down. Hooray. Not that Albania is super important, but I don't want the Italians to get any stronger. Got to the point where our funds have recovered, so I'm just going to go back and take this to say and let it resume construction. And into, thank you very much, private shipbuilding. Go into weight saving. And another one. And another one. Well, that's all very nice. And another one. CV conversions. Thank you. That was a move. And into November. And finally, wonderful. Into December, another round of fighting has broken out. Several. It's deplorable. Who do we want to take on? So I suppose by a process of elimination, we don't want to do the USA, we don't want to do Japan, we don't want to do Britain at this point. So Soviet Union, you bad people. And another research. Well, it's been a bumper couple of months for research. So here we are in December 1922, and it's been a great year. We are really on track for modernizing our 1920s legacy fleet, not to mention quite a successful war. We are chugging our way through the priority list, so we are keeping on top of aircraft development. We are building a CVL from the keel up. We are nearly through our program of modifying the Doucet-class battlecruisers so that they can take up their role as a modern scouting force and the future escorts for the carriers. We have refitted the battleships, the 12 inches, so they don't cost so much. And I am just now started to put some corvettes under construction, good old-fashioned 1600s, so 1,600 tons on colonial service means they account for 2,000 tons of colonial requirement. France needs 39,000, so with a fleet of 20, we will be able to completely satisfy all of the foreign requirements for as little money as humanly possible, plus get a great 20 corvette fleet for trade protection work. It means that if I send heavier units out to the colonies, it's because I want to do something with them rather than having to juggle around moving them just to fulfill the requirements in an inexpensive way, as I'm having to do at the moment. So pleased at that. Obviously, we only have 8,800 and have a negative balance at the moment because we also just started the Gloire, which will be ready in 18 months' time. So money has gone up and down, so you can see our expenses have stayed high. Our funds have gone down and down as we've been mainly in negative balance with this short peak last month. We'll be negative again next year, but that's going to be okay. We, just nip and tuck. This is classic of what you have to do throughout the game, really, but particularly when you're dealing with a legacy fleet. We've scrapped the Shanzai, which we will never speak of again, for 32. We've rebuilt 4 Doucets and have got the last one under rebuild. We started the carrier, we started the corvettes, and we refitted the 4 dreadnoughts. Tensions have gone from war down to this, but obviously expecting next year for this to go steadily upwards. We've had a fantastic 8 techs this year. Now, normally it's about 5 or 6, so 8. I wonder whether it's because during wartime you tend to get fewer techs come through because people are concentrating on other things, and then you can get a bit of a splurge afterwards, or maybe it's just a good year. Certainly, tensions have gone from peace, and we've just had a couple of tension events, so I'm expecting next year to be a little bit more tense, And naturally, the budget's gone from nearly 400,000 to just under 300,000. And again, I'm expecting that to rise in what should be the final year, largely, of sorting out the 1920 legacy fleet, so that in 1924, we can really crack on with starting to build a brand new fleet with some exciting designs, secure that we've got a strong, modern supporting force behind us to take us into the future. Sounds like fun to me. Hope you can join me. Thanks so much for watching, and stay safe.